Hey, welcome or welcome back if you're returning. We are reading A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. We're reading The Hedge Knight, and last time we covered the first day of the tourney. It was quite exciting, so let's get back into it. The second day of the tourney was overcast, with a gusty wind blowing in from the west. The crowd should be less on a day like this, Dunk thought. It would have been easier for them to find a spot near the fence to see the jousting up close. Egg might have sat on the rail, while I stood behind him. Instead, Egg would have a seat in the viewing box, dressed in silks and furs, while Dunk's view would be limited to the four walls of his tower cell, where Lord Ashford's men had confined him. The chamber had a window, but it faced in the wrong direction. Even so, Dunk crammed himself into the window seat as the sun came up and stared gloomily across the town and field and forest. They had taken his hempen sword belt, and his sword and dagger with it, and they had taken his silver as well. He had hoped Egg or Raymond would remember Chestnut and Dunder. Egg, he muttered low under his breath. His squire, a poor lad plucked from the streets of King's Landing. Had ever a knight been made such a fool? Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall, and slow as an aurochs. He had not been permitted to speak to Egg since Lord Ashford's soldiers had scooped them all up at the puppet show, nor Raymond, nor Tanzell, nor anyone, nor even Lord Ashford himself. He wondered if he would ever see any of them again. For all he knew, they meant to keep him up in this small room until he died. What did I think would happen? He asked himself bitterly. I knocked down a prince's son and kicked him in the face. Beneath these grey skies, the flowing finery of the high-born lords and great champions would not seem quite so splendid as it had the day before. The sun, walled behind the clouds, would not brush their steel helms with brilliance, nor make their gold and silver chasings glitter and flash. But even so, Dunk wished he was in the crowd to watch the jousting. It would be a good day for the Hedge Knights, for men in plain mail on unbarded horses. He could hear them at least. The horns of the heralds carried well, and from time to time, the roar from the crowd told him someone had fallen, or risen, or done something especially bold. He heard faint hoofbeats too, and once in a great while, the clash of swords or the snap of a lance. Dunk winced whenever he heard that last. It reminded him of the noise Tanzell's finger had made when Arion broke it. There were other sounds too, closer at hand. Footfalls in the hall outside his door, the stamp of hoofs in the yard below, shouts and voices from the castle walls. Sometimes they drowned out the tourney. Dunk supposed that was just as well. A hedge knight is the truest kind of knight, Dunk, the old man had told him a long, long time ago. Other knights serve the lords who keep them, or from whom they hold their lands. But we serve where we will, for men whose causes we believe in. Every knight swears to protect the weak and innocent, but we keep the vow best, I think. Queer how strong that memory seemed. Dunk had quite forgotten those words, and perhaps the old man had as well, toward the end. The morning turned to afternoon. The distant sounds of tourney began to dwindle and die. Dusk began to seep into the cell, but Dunk still sat in the window seat, looking out on the gathering dark and trying to ignore his empty belly. And then he heard footsteps and a jangling of iron keys. He uncoiled to rise to his feet as the door opened. 2 guards pushed in, one bearing an oil lamp. A serving man followed with a tray of food. Behind came Egg. Leave the lamp and the food and go, the boy told them. They did as he commanded, though Dunk noticed that they left the heavy wooden door ajar. The smell of food made him realize how ravenous he was. There was hot bread and honey, a bowl of peas porridge, a skewer of roast onions and well-charred meat. He sat by the tray, pulled apart the bread with his hands, and stuffed some into his mouth. There's no knife, he observed. Did they think I'd stab you, boy? They didn't tell me what they thought. Egg wore a close-fitting black wool doublet with a tucked waist and long sleeves lined with red satin. Across his chest was sewn the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. My uncle says I must humbly beg your forgiveness for deceiving you. Your uncle? Said Dunk. That would be Prince Baelor? The boy looked miserable. I never meant to lie. But you did. About everything. Starting with your name. I never heard of a Prince Egg. It's short for Aegon. My brother Aemon named me Egg. He's off at the Citadel now, learning to be a maester. And Daron sometimes calls me Egg as well. And so do my sisters. Dunk lifted the skewer and bit into a chunk of meat. Goat, flavoured with some lordly spice he'd never tasted before. Grease ran down his chin. Aegon, he repeated. Of course it would be Aegon. Like Aegon the dragon. How many Aegons has there been? 4, the boy said. 4 Aegons. Dunk chewed, swallowed, and tore off some more bread. Why did you do it? Was it some jape to make a fool of the stupid Hedge Knight? No, the boy's eyes filled with tears, but he stood there manfully. I was supposed to squire for Daron. He's my oldest brother. I learned everything I had to learn to be a good squire. But Daron isn't a very good knight. He didn't want to ride in the tourney. So after we left Summerhall, he stole away with our escort, only instead of doubling back, he went straight on toward Ashford, thinking they'd never look for us that way. It was him shift my head. He knew father would send men hunting us. Daron has common hair, sort of a pale brown. Nothing special, but mine is like Aerion's, and my father's. The blood of the dragon, Dunk said. Silver gold hair and purple eyes. Everyone knows that. Thick as a castle wall, Dunk. Yes. So Daron shaved it off. He meant for us to hide until the tourney was over. Only then you took me for a stable boy and... He lowered his eyes. I didn't care if Daron fought or not, but I wanted to be somebody's squire. I'm sorry, sir. I truly am. Dunk looked at him thoughtfully. He knew what it was like to want something so badly you would tell a monstrous lie just to get near it. I thought you were like me, he said. Might be you are. Only not the way I thought. We're both from King's Landing still, the boy said hopefully. Dunk had to laugh. Yes, you from atop Aegon's Hill and me from the bottom. That's not so far, sir. Dunk took a bite from an onion. Do I need to call you my lord or your grace or something? At court, the boy admitted, but other times you can keep calling me Egg if you like, sir. What would they do with me, Egg? My uncle wants to see you after you're done eating, sir. Dunk shoved the platter aside and stood. I'm done now, then. I've already kicked one prince in the mouth. I don't mean to keep another waiting. Lord Ashford had turned his own chambers over to Prince Baelor for the duration of his stay, so it was the Lord Solar that Aegon, he would have to get used to that, conducted him. Baelor sat, reading by the light of a beeswax candle. Dunk knelt before him. Rise, the prince said. Would you care for wine? As it please you, your grace. Pour Sir Duncan a cup of the sweet Dornish red, Aegon, the prince commanded. Try not to spill it on him. You've done him sufficient ill already. The boy won't spill, your grace, said Dunk. He's a good boy, a good squire, and he meant no harm to me, I know. One not need to intend harm to do it. Aegon should have come to me when he saw what his brother was doing to these puppeteers. Instead, he ran to you. That was no kindness. What you did, sir, well, I might have done the same in your place, but I am a prince of the realm, not a hedge knight. It is never wise to strike a king's grandson in anger, no matter the cause. Dunk nodded grimly. Egg offered him a silver goblet, brimming with wine. He accepted it and took a long swallow. I hate Aerion, Egg said with vehemence. And I had to run for Sir Duncan, uncle. The castle was too far. Aerion is your brother. the prince said firmly, and the Septons say we must love our brothers. Aegon, leave us now. I would speak with Sir Duncan privately. The boy put down the flagon of wine and bowed stiffly. As you will, your grace. He went to the door of the solar and closed it softly behind him. Baelor Breakspear studied Dunk's eyes for a long moment. Sir Duncan, let me ask you this. How good a hedge knight are you, truly? How skilled at arms? Dunk did not know what to say. Sir Arlan taught me sword and shield, and how to tilt at rings and quintains. Prince Baelor seemed troubled by that answer. My brother Maekar returned to the castle a few hours ago. He found his heir drunk in an inn a day's ride to the south. Maekar would never admit as much, but I believe it was his secret hope that his grandsons might outshine mine in this tourney. Instead, they have both shamed him. But what is he to do? They are blood of his blood. Maekar is angry, and must needs have a target for his wrath. He has chosen you. Me? Dunk said miserably. Aerion has already filled his father's ear, and Daron has not helped you either. To excuse his own cowardice, he told my brother that a huge robber knight, chance met on the road, made off with Aegon. I fear that you have been cast as this robber knight, sir. In Daron's tale, he has spent all these days pursuing you, hither and yon, to win back his brother. But Egg will tell him the truth. Aegon, I mean. Egg will tell him, I have no doubt, said Prince Baelor, but the boy has been known to lie too, as you have good reason to recall. Which son will my brother believe? As for the matter of these puppeteers, by the time Aerion is done twisting the tale, it will be high treason. The dragon is the sigil of the royal house. To portray one being slain, sawdust blood spilling from its neck, well, it was doubtless innocent, but far from wise. Aerion calls it a veiled attack on House Targaryen, an incitement to revolt. Maekar will likely agree. My brother has prickly nature, and he has placed all his best hopes on Aerion, and since Daron has been such a grave disappointment to him. The prince took a sip of wine, then set the goblet aside. Whatever my brother believes or fails to believe, one truth is beyond dispute. You laid hands upon the blood of the dragon. For that offence, you must be tried and judged and punished. Punished? Dunk did not like the sound of that. Aerion would like your head, with or without teeth. He will not have it, I promise you, but I cannot deny him a trial. As my royal father is hundreds of leagues away, my brother and I must sit in judgment of you, along with Lord Ashford's, whose domains these are, and Lord Tyrell of Highgarden, his liege lord. The last time a man was found guilty of striking one of royal blood, it was decreed that he should lose the offending hand. My hand? Said Dunk, aghast. And your foot. You kicked him too, did you not? Dunk could not speak. To be sure, I will urge my fellow judges to be merciful. I am the king's hand, and the heir to the throne. My word carries some weight. But so does my brother's. There is risk there. Said Dunk, Your Grace, They meant no treason. It was only a wooden dragon. It was never meant to be a royal prince, he wanted to say, but his words had deserted him once and all. He had never been any good with words. You have another choice, though, Prince Baelor said quietly. Whether it is a better choice, or a worse one, I cannot say. But I remind you that any knight accused of a crime has the right to demand a trial by combat. So I ask you once again, Sir Duncan the Tall, how good a knight are you, truly? A trial of 7, said Prince Aerion, smiling. That is my right, I do believe. Prince Baelor drummed his fingers on the table, frowning. To his left, Lord Ashford nodded slowly. Why? Prince Maekar demanded, leaning forward to his son. Are you afraid to face this Hedge Knight alone and let the gods decide the truth of your accusations?" "Afraid," said Arion, "of such as this? Don't be absurd. Father, my thought is for your beloved brother. Daron has been wronged by this Sir Duncan as well, and has first claim to his blood. A trial of 7 allows us both to face him." "Do me no favours, brother," muttered Daron Targaryen. The eldest son of Prince Maekar looked even worse than when Duncan encountered him at the inn. He seemed to be sober this time, his red and black doublet unstained by wine, but his eyes were bloodshot, and a fine sheen of sweat covered his brow. "I am content to cheer you on as you slay the rogue." "You are too kind, sweet brother," said Prince Arion, all smiles. "But it would be selfish of me to deny you the right to prove the truth of your words at the hazard of your body. I must insist upon a trial of 7. Dunk was lost. "Your Grace, my lords," he said to the dais, "I do not understand. What is this trial of 7? Prince Baelor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It is another form of trial by combat, ancient, seldom invoked. It came across the narrow sea with the Andals and their 7 gods. In any trial by combat, the accuser and the accused are asking the gods to decide the issue between them. The Andals believed that if the 7 champions fought on each side, the gods, thus being honoured, would be more like to take a hand and see that a just result was achieved. Or mayhaps they simply had a taste of swordplay," said Lord Leo Tyrell, a cynical smile touching his lips. "Regardless, Sir Arion is within his rights. A trial of 7 it must be." "I must fight 7 men, then?" Dunk asked hopelessly. "Not alone, sir," Prince Maekar said impatiently. "Don't play the fool. It will not serve. It must be 7 against 7. You must needs find 6 other knights to fight beside you." 6 knights, Dunk thought. They might as well have told him to find 6,000. He had no brothers, no cousins, no old comrades who had stood beside him in battle. Why would 6 strangers risk their own lives to defend a hedge knight against 2 raw princelings? "Your graces, my lords," he said, "what if no one will take my part?" Maekar Targaryen looked down on him coldly. "If a cause is just, good men will fight for it. If you can find no champions, sir, it will be because you are guilty. Could anything be more plain?" Dunk had never felt so alone as he did when he walked out the gates of Ashford Castle and heard the portcullis rattle down behind him. A soft rain was falling, light as dew on his skin, and yet he shivered at the touch of it. Across the river, coloured rings haloed the scant few pavilions where fires still burned. The night was half gone, he guessed. Dawn would be on him in a few hours. And with dawn comes death. They had given him back his sword and silver. Yet, as he waded across the ford, his thoughts were bleak. He wondered if they expected him to saddle a horse and flee. He could, if he wished. That would be the end of his knighthood, to be sure. He would be no more than an outlaw henceforth, until the day some Lorn took him and struck off his head. Better to die a knight than live like that, he told himself stubbornly. Wet to the knee, he trudged past the empty lists. Most of the pavilions were dark, their owners long asleep, but here and there a few candles still burned. Dunk heard soft moans and cries of pleasure coming from within one tent. It made him wonder whether he would die without ever having known a maid. Then he heard the snort of a horse, a snort he somehow knew for thunders. He turned his steps and ran, and there he was, tied up with Chestnut, outside a round pavilion lit from within by a vague golden glow. On its centre pole, the banner hung sodden, but Dunk could still make out the dark curve of the Fossaway apple. It looked like hope. "A trial by combat," Raymond said heavily. "Gods be good. Duncan, that means lances of war, morning stars, battle axes. The swords won't be blunted. Do you understand that? Raymond the Reluctant, mocked his cousin Sir Stephen. An apple made of gold and garnets fastened his cloak of yellow wool. You need not fear, cousin. This is a knightly combat. As you are no knight, your skin is not at risk. Sir Duncan, you have one foss away at least, the ripe one. I saw what Arion did to those puppeteers. I am for you. And I, snapped Raymond angrily. I only meant... His cousin cut him off. Who fights with us, Sir Duncan? Dunk spread his hands hopelessly. I know no one else. Well, except Sir Manfred Dondarrion. He wouldn't even vouch that I was a knight. He'll never risk his life for me. Sir Stephen seemed perturbed. Then we need 5 more good men. Fortunately, I have more than 5 friends. Leo Longthorn, the Laughing Storm, Lord Caron, the Lannisters, Sir Otho Bracken, I, and the Blackwoods as well. Though you will never get a Blackwood and a Bracken on the same side of a melee. I shall go and speak with some of them. They won't be happy at being woken, his cousin objected. Excellent, declared Sir Stephen. If they are angry, they'll fight all the more fiercely. You may rely on me, Sir Duncan. Cousin, if I do not return before dawn, bring my armour, and see that Wrath is saddled and barded for me. I shall meet you both in the Challenger's paddock. He laughed. This will be a day long remembered, I think. When he strode from the tent, he looked almost happy. Not so Raymond. 5 nights, he said glumly, after his cousin had gone. Duncan, I am loath to dash your hopes, but if your cousin can bring the men he speaks of, Leo Longthorn, the Brute of Bracken, the Laughing Storm, Raymond stood. He knows all of them, I have no doubt, but I would be less certain that any of them know him. Stephen sees this as a chance for glory, but it means your life. You should find your own men. I'll help. Better you have too many champions than too few. A noise outside made Raymond turn his head. Who goes there? He demanded, as a boy ducked through the flap. Followed by a thin man in a rain-sodden black coat. Egg? Dunk got to his feet. What are you doing here? I'm your squire, the boy said. You'll need someone to arm you, sir. Does your lord father know that you've left the castle? Gods be good, I hope not. Daeron Targaryen undid the clasp of his cloak and let it slide from his thin shoulders. You? Are you mad? Coming here? Dunk pulled his knife from his sheath. I ought to shove this through your belly. Probably, Prince Daeron admitted, though I'd sooner you poured me a cup of wine. Look at my hands. He held out one hand and let them all see how it shook. Dunk stepped towards him, glowering. I don't care about your hands. You lied to me. I had to say something when my father demanded to know where my little brother had gotten to, the prince replied. He seated himself, ignoring Dunk and his knife. If truth be told, I hadn't even realized Egg was gone. He wasn't at the bottom of my wine cup, and I hadn't looked anywhere else, so... He sighed. Sir, my father is going to join the 7 accusers, Egg broke in. I begged him not to, but he won't listen. He said it is the only way to redeem Aerion's honour, and Daeron's. Not that I ever asked to have my honour redeemed, said Prince Daeron sourly. Whoever has it can keep it, so far as I'm concerned. Still, here we are. For what it's worth, Sir Duncan, you have little to fear from me. The only thing I like less than horses are swords, heavy things and beastly sharp. I'll do my best to look gallant in the first charge. But after that, well, perhaps you could strike me a nice blow to the side of the helm. Make it ring, but not too loud, if you take my meaning. My brothers have my measure when it comes to fighting, and dancing, and thinking, and reading books, but none of them is half my equal at lying insensible in the mud. Dunk could only stare at him, and wonder whether the princeling was trying to play him for a fool. Why did you come? To warn you of what you face, Daeron said. My father has commanded the King's Guard to fight with him." "The King's Guard?" said Dunk, appalled. "Well, the 3 who are here. Thank the gods Uncle Baylor left the other 4 at King's Landing with our royal grandfather." Egg supplied the names. Sir Roland Crakehall, Sir Donald of Deskendale, and Sir William Wilde. "They have small choice in the matter," said Daron. "They are sworn to protect the lives of the king and royal family, and my brothers and I are blood of the dragon. Gods help us." Dunk counted on his fingers. "That makes 6. Who is the 7th man?" Prince Daron shrugged. "Arion will find someone. If need be, he will buy a champion. He has no lack of gold." "Who do you have?" Egg asked. "Raymond's cousin, Sir Stefan." Daron winced. "Only one? Sir Stefan has gone to find some friends." "I can bring people," said Egg. "Knights, I can." "Egg," Dunk said, "I will be fighting your own brothers." "You won't hurt Daron, though," the boy said. "He told you he'd fall down. And Arion, I remember when I was little, he used to come into my bedchamber at night and put his knife between my legs. He had too many brothers, he'd say. Maybe one night he'd make me his sister, then he could marry me. He threw my cat in the well too. He says he didn't, but he always lies." Prince Daron gave a weary shrug. "Egg has the truth of it. Arion's quite the monster. He thinks he's a dragon in human form, you know. That's why he was so wroth at the puppet show. A pity he wasn't born a Fossaway. Then he'd think himself an apple and we'd all be a deal safer. But there you are." Standing, he scooped up his fallen cloak and shook the rain from it. "I must steal back to the castle before my father wonders why I'm taking so long to sharpen my sword. But before I go, I would like a private word, Sir Duncan. Will you walk with me?" Dunk looked at the princeling, suspiciously a moment. "As you wish, your grace." He sheathed his dagger. "I need to get my shield too." "Egg and I will look for knights," promised Raymond. Prince Daron knotted his cloak around his neck and pulled up the hood. Dunk followed him back out into the soft rain. They walked towards the merchants' wagons. "I dreamed of you," said the prince. "You said that at the inn." "Did I? Well, it's so. My dreams are not like yours, Sir Duncan. Mine are true. They frighten me. You frighten me. I dreamed of you and a dead dragon, you see. A great beast, huge, with wings so large they could cover this meadow. It had fallen on top of you, but you were alive, and the dragon was dead." "Did I kill it?" "That I could not say. But you were there, and so was the dragon. We were the masters of dragons once, we Targaryens. Now they are all gone, but we remain. I don't care to die today. The gods alone know why, but I don't. So do me a kindness, if you would, and make certain it is my brother Arion you slay." "I don't care to die either," said Dunk. "Well, I shan't kill you, sir. I'll withdraw my accusations as well, but it won't serve unless Arion withdraws his." He sighed. "It may well be I've killed you with my lie. If so, I am sorry. I'm doomed to some hell, I know. Likely one without wine." He shuddered. And on that, they parted, there in the cool, soft rain. The merchants had drawn up their wagons on the western verge of the meadow, beneath a stand of birch and ash. Doug stood under the trees and looked helplessly at the empty place where the puppeteer's wagon had been. Gone. He had feared they might be. I would flee as well if I were not thick as a castle wall. He wondered what he would do for a shield now. He had the silver to buy one, he supposed, if he could find one for sale. "Sir Duncan," a voice called out of the dark. Dunk turned to find Steely Pate standing behind him, holding an iron lantern. Under a short leather cloak, the armour was bare from the waist up, his broad chest and thick arms covered with coarse black hair. "If you are come for your shield, she left it with me. He looked Dunk up and down. 2 hands and 2 feet, I count. So, it's to be trial by combat, is it? A trial of 7. How did you know? Well, they might have kissed you and made you a lord, but it didn't seem likely. And if it went t'other way, you'd be short some parts. Now follow me. His wagon was easy to distinguish by the sword and anvil painted on its side. Dunk followed Pate inside. The armourer hung the lantern on a hook, shrugged out of his wet cloak, and pulled a rough spun tunic down over his head. A hinged board dropped down from one wall to make a table. Sit, he said, shoving a low stool toward him. Dunk sat. Where did she go? They make for Dorn. The girl's uncle, there's a wise man. Well, gone is well forgot. Stay and be seen, and belike the dragon remembers. Beside, he did not think she ought to see you die. Pate went to the far end of the wagon, rummaged around in the shadows a moment, and returned with the shield. Your rim was old, cheap steel, brittle and rusted, he said. I've made you a new one, twice as thick, and put some bands across the back. It will be heavier now, but stronger too. The girl did the paint. She had made a better job of it than he could ever have hoped for. Even by lantern light, the sunset colours were rich and bright. The tree tall and strong and noble. The falling star was a bright slash of paint across the oaken sky. Yet, now that Dunk held it in his hands, it seemed all wrong. The star was falling. What sort of sigil was that? Would he fall just as fast? And sunset heralds night. I should have stayed with the chalice, he said miserably. It had wings, at least, to fly away, and Sir Arlen said the cup was full of faith and fellowship and good things to drink. This shield is all painted up like death. The elm's alive, Paint pointed out. See how green the leaves are. Summer leaves, for certain. And I've seen shields blazoned with skulls and wolves and ravens, even hanged men and bloody heads. They served well enough, and so will this. You know the old shield rhyme. Oak and iron garb me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell, Dunk finished. He had not thought of that rhyme in years. The old man had taught it to him a long time ago. How much do you want for the new riminal? He asked Pate. From you? Pate scratched his beard. A copper. The rain had all but stopped as the first one light suffused the eastern sky, but it had done its work. Lord Ashford's men had removed the barriers, and the tourney field was one great morass of grey-brown mud and torn grass. Tendrils of fog were writhing across the ground like pale white snakes as Dunk made his way back towards the list. Steely Pate walked with him. The viewing stand had already begun to fill, the lords and ladies clutching their cloaks tight about them against the morning chill. Small folk were drifting in across the fields as well, and hundreds of them already stood along the fence. So many come to see me die, thought Dunk bitterly. But he wronged them. A few steps farther on, a woman called out, Good fortune to you. An old man stepped up to take his hand and said, May the gods give you strength, sir. Then a begging brother, in a tattered brown robe, said a blessing on his sword, and a maid kissed his cheek. They are for me. Why? He asked Pate. What am I to them? A knight who remembers his vows, the smith said. That's where we're going to leave it for today. We will cover the last of the Hedge Knight in the next video. So tune in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of that section. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.